Last Friday, the trustee of the Irish Airlines General Employee Superannuation Scheme, known as the IASS, applied to the Pensions Authority for a Section 50 direction and submitted a funding proposal to address the deficit in the IASS. The trustee requested that I commence with immediate effect Sections 32B1 and 32B5 of the Air Navigation and Transport Amendment Act 1998, as inserted by Section 34(1) of the State Airport Shannon Group Act 2014, to facilitate implementation of the funding proposals should the Pensions Authority approve them. These sections allow the trustees to amend the provisions of the scheme and also to provide for the cessation of the revaluation of preserved benefits under the scheme where the trustee amends it. Having considered the trustee request and reflected on all of the issues relating to the IASS difficulties, I signed the commencement order last evening. Had I not signed the order, this would have posed an unquantifiable risk to the entire scheme and could have had profoundly serious implications for all members of the scheme. I would like to set out to the House the background to these difficulties. First, I should make it clear that the administration of the IASS is a matter for the trustees of that scheme. Resolution of its funding difficulties is primarily a matter for the trustees, the companies participating in the scheme members and the Pensions Authority. The process currently underway involves all of these stakeholders. These difficulties have increased with the result that a significant funding deficit has arisen, up from €344 million in 2011 to €769 million in March 2013. I understand that this was due not only to the unsustainable structure of the scheme, but also the global downturn, which saw the value of investments fall sharply, allied with interest rates falling to unprecedented levels and thereby significantly increasing the scheme liabilities. With the scale of this deficit, it was outlined last March that in the event of a wind-up of the scheme, because priority is given to pensioners, the active and deferred members would receive only 5% of their benefit expectations based on pension legislation prior to the December 2013 amendment, which permitted reductions to be made into pensions in payment. Against the background of threatened industrial action, my department and the Department of Jobs, Enterprise and Innovation, together with ICTU and IBEC, established an expert panel to investigate how a final resolution could be reached. Their task included finding the fairest way to distribute the burden of resolving the current deficit in the scheme while addressing a range of other impediments. The panel recommended in its report that the IASS trustee engage with the employers on ways to alleviate as much of the impact of the trustee proposals as possible for the deferred members, while also recognising the overall affordability to the employers of the proposals for active and deferred members. The panel outlined a set of principles that it recommended should form the basis of such engagement. As a result of that report, there was an uplift in the monies to be provided by the employers outside of the IASS, a significant proportion of which is intended for the deferred members to make a contribution towards mitigating the benefit cuts proposed by the trustee. This is an essential consequence of the process proposed by the expert panel. Specifically, almost €20 million in extra funding is being proposed by the employers for deferred members, in addition to the €40 million already been made available for this group, bringing the full amount to €60 million. The total contribution proposed by the employers for all members now amounts to over €260 million. The trustee advised me on the 12th of November 2014 that having given consideration to the observations it received pursuant to the consultation process and all relevant factors, it has decided to make an application to the Pensions Authority for a Section 50 direction and to submit a funding proposal based on the measures outlined to address the deficit in the IASS. The application is subject to Aer Lingus shareholder approval for the proposals and the commencement by ministerial order of the relevant provisions of the State Airports Shannon Group Act of 2014. The trustee asked that I proceed with the immediate commencement of the provision in order to facilitate implementation of the funding proposal. The trustee, who has the lead role in terms of responsibility of the pension scheme, believes that the measures proposed are in the overall best interests of the members of the IASS as a whole, are in compliance with the trustee's fiduciary duties, and also in line with the trustee's obligations under the Pensions Act and the requirement of the Pension Authority. The trustee also confirmed its compliance with Section 34B1 of the State Airports Act of 2014. The three employers, Aer Lingus, DAA and SAA, also wrote in support of the trustee's request that the commencement orders be made with immediate effect in order to facilitate implementation of the funding proposals. On the basis of this, it is very clear to me that the proposals to resolve this difficulty are complicated, they are intricate, and they are deeply challenging. It is also clear that the funding proposed by the employers is the maximum that can be achieved in the circumstances. It must be recognised that over €260 million is a significant contribution from the employers, particularly in the context of the ongoing viability of these companies as major employers. Any efforts to reduce the impact of the proposals on one group would adversely affect the other groups and destabilise the entire initiative. I agree with the panel's view, and I sincerely believe that in the circumstances, the proposed package of measures offers the best possible outcome for all concerned.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Darragh O'Brien, with 4 minutes, Senator.
Thank you, Minister, for coming into the House today. I did request that on the order of business. I appreciate you're busy, but I'm sure you appreciate the gravity of what you did yesterday and what signing the 2 commencement orders actually means to thousands of people who were members of the scheme. There's a couple of points. 4 minutes is not going to be enough for me to address it, but I do welcome this as some way of putting across. Firstly, I'm really disappointed, I have to say, that you moved yesterday to sign the commencement orders in advance of the social welfare bill being completed in the Dáil and in advance of it coming here into the Seanad, because I and other colleagues, both the Fianna Fáil party and other members of other parties, had tabled amendments which I'm sure you would have seen, and the Minister for Social Protection would have seen, which would actually negate some, if passed, would negate some of the additional powers that you gave to trustees in the State Airports Shannon Group Act 2014. So it's a pity. So to me it feels like we've had the legs taken from under us. Just to say a couple of things. You've referred on a number of occasions to the 260 million being a significant amount being put into the scheme by the employer. Can I also say to you, the €500 million deficit that is left from the €769 million deficit to the 260 million that the employers have apparently put into the scheme means that they've been able to wipe off €500 million. And what you did by bringing in, and your predecessor with Minister Joan Burton in the Shannon Airport scheme, to give the trustee the unilateral power to reduce benefits in the scheme to active, deferred and retired members, has actually now allowed the trustees and the companies effectively to write off €500 million. And how have they actually done that? That was the underfunded amount when you take into account the 269 million put in. The irony of it is that you're going to have the long service deferred members in particular being hit by nearly 50%, and some of them over that. Retired members of the scheme, people who've worked in the scheme and who've worked in the company for decades, are going to lose 6 weeks' pay. And on top of that, and I would ask you to look at this, on top of the 6 weeks' pay they're losing, which is a fact, over 10%, they're the ones, because they are the retired members now are the ones who are going to carry the ongoing risk of that scheme. And they're the ones who are paying now an additional levy of 2.53% on their benefits on top, because the government, your government, took €28 million from that an underfunded scheme to pay the pension levy. And ironically, just I think 11 million just very recently. In 4 minutes, it doesn't give me enough, but what's being done here, can I just state it again, and I said it to you when you brought the State Airports Bill here. This is the very, very first time in the history of the state that you, a minister, and you, a government, have legislated to reduce benefits in a specific private pension scheme. That's what you've done. And why have we done it? And add insult to further injury is that who's going to vote on this? The shareholders are going to vote on it. The shareholders in Aer Lingus are having an EGM on the 10th of December. And the scheme members themselves don't get a say. And you mentioned the fact of threatened industrial action. And this was a big divvy up between the unions and government on this, because you knew the retired members didn't have industrial action at their fingertips, and those who had left the company were no longer employers. So they're the ones who've actually taken the brunt of the cuts, let alone active members, yes, have taken a hit and are going into an inferior scheme effectively. So really what's being done, and it's unfortunate we're even talking about it because it's done now. And that's the terror, that this is done, and you're going to have a situation whereby shareholders can vote and members can't. And can I finally say, by the way, I've seen this in a number of speeches, nothing personal, but whoever's writing these for you, you keep referring to the expert panel engaging with the different groups. They did not engage with the different groups. They engaged with the employers and the unions. They did not engage with the retired members through RASA, and they did not engage in any meaningful way with the deferred members. That, frankly, is a lie. They did not. And who's been left carrying the can for years and years of underfunding and mistakes by successive employers, by successive governments right the way through. This scheme was used as a vehicle to get people out of the company. I don't even have enough time to go into the difference with regard to the uncoordinated members and the coordinated members, the people who paid more money into this scheme and are still losing as much as those who paid less. But what have I been given in this? 4 minutes. Well, what I will tell you, I'll conclude on this. I have amendments tabled, my colleague Willie O'Dea and the Dáil, and I intend to table them for the welfare bill. But this has been coming down the track for 2.5 years, and you here today, and by doing what you've done yesterday, have given a roadmap for every single employer in this country to wind down their defined benefit schemes. And this started with Minister Burton in the Social Welfare and Pensions Bill 2 years ago, when she changed the priority order. All people wanted, we knew you weren't going to put €760 million into the scheme. Of course not. Of course not. But as a fair, and it is a fair breakdown and a fair level of cuts across the different categories. That's what's all, and not to allow a solvent employer wind down an insolvent scheme. And Joan Burton brought that in, a single insolvency arrangement. That's what you've done. Profitable companies sitting on millions and millions of euro of cash were 2 years ago given a roadmap about how they wipe off €500 million. Gone. Their share price is going to go through the roof on the 10th of December when the shareholders vote for this. And what they're voting for is to cut old people's pensions and to take the legs from under the deferred members and existing members. But I do thank you for being here today. It's nothing personal, Minister, but I'm really disgusted at what happened yesterday, and right the way through that no one's listened. And the Taoiseach sat down, I would say. She sat down last week, by the way. Do you know this? With members of this scheme, and actually said, well, there might be a way forward on this. And I believe she sent a Labour backbencher to you yesterday. A Labour backbencher to you to ask you not to sign it. Was this even discussed at Cabinet in detail about signing these commencement orders? And do you actually realise what's been done? And what, by your actions, what's actually been done?
Thank you, Senator O'Brien. Minister.
Thank you, Cahirlock, and I want to thank all the members for their contribution that they've made this evening on this extremely serious matter. A number of people have put to me, do I appreciate the gravity of this situation? I have met individuals that will be affected by this. I have heard the challenges they face and the pressure that they're under. And I absolutely appreciate the personal consequences that pensioners, that workers are facing as a result of the application that will go to the Pension Board. what I also understand the gravity of is a pension scheme that now has a deficit of between 750 and 800 million euro. Okay? And this is a pension scheme that had a deficit of approximately 369 million euro between 3 and 4 years ago, and now has a deficit, I estimate, of around 769 million euro. So that is the gravity of the situation that is facing the pension fund in its entirety, and individual members and their families who either are working and are working, who are looking to secure their living and their income from this. And I have an absolute understanding of the gravity of both issues. And what I do find disappointing about some of the points that were put to me is what I find missing in some of the contributions that have been made from you, Senator O'Brien, and you, Senator Power, is any acknowledgement of the scale of this issue. The scale of the issue, 769 million euros. And the points that follow on from all of this in terms of the process. Let's emphasise what has happened here. The trustee has written to me saying, based on all of the work that has gone on, that has involved every Labour body in this country, that has involved an expert panel, and a huge amount of work from the employers, from all concerned. They have written to me and they have said they believe this to be the best outcome to be secured.
The expert panel did its job.
They have written to me looking for this, and what I would ask people back, and I am so conscious of the consequences that people are facing here. Two questions I would ask people. The first one is, how can anybody in this House be certain that a different outcome exists that is better than what is on the table at the moment, that has less risk for people that people are facing?
And it's just a point of order. And it's not to interrupt you, but it's unfair of the Minister to ask us questions when he knows we cannot respond.
That's not a point of order.
I can't respond to the questions that you've asked.
Sorry, Senator O'Brien, you belittle the gravity of this situation.
I certainly do not.
By standing up and making a point like this.
Sorry. Senator O'Brien.
I have come in here. I have come in here. I have come in to respond.
And ask you to draw that. I'm not going to stand for that.
It's a political charge. Please resume. Sorry, Minister.
If you're asking questions that you know I can't answer, and then you're saying I'm belittling the situation, under no circumstances, and you should withdraw that.
And Senator, you know that I agreed to come into this House.
Yes, and I thank you for it.
As quickly as I would, on a format that is determined by this House, as you well know.
What am I supposed to do when you say that I'm belittling the situation?
Let me conclude by responding to the issue here that is affecting so many families. This is an issue that has gone on for years, for decades. And we now face a situation here where we have, as I said, a fund of a deficit here of between 750 and 800 million euro. That's the scale of the issue that's been faced here. And the trustees wrote to me saying, on the basis of all the work that has been done and all of the engagement that has happened, they believe this to be the best outcome that is achievable in these circumstances.
The same trustees who ran the scheme in
what is now going to happen, as people are aware, is some workers have voted on it. A process is now going to be made where this application will be made to the Pension Board, an independent body that will make a decision in relation to this. And the question that I have grappled with, because I have met people who are affected by this, I have met people who are participating in the scheme and how they have paid into it, is with the scale of deficit that is in place at the moment, with all of the work that has gone underway to deal with this, how can anybody be certain that, first, more funding would be secured to deal with this, and second, if this process was not to work, what, if anything, would take its place?
Thank you.
And if there's nothing to take its place,
It's great to be able to answer
emphasise
questions that
again.
you know we can't answer.
But these are questions that I have to grapple with, because this is the work that the trustees have done. This is the process that has undergone.
But
It is a deficit of
Minister, just quickly.
€750 million that has a material effect on people, which employers, which their representatives, which unions have all engaged in, which an expert panel and every other labour court, nearly every labour institution in the country has worked on to deliver.
on 60%.
And with the consequences of all of this, what I go back to people with is those who are saying that a different course of action should be found must look at the fact that more funding has been found from employers during this process as a result of the expert panel, and have to ask one question in relation to it, which is what is the alternative process now, given where we stand now, and where could extra funding be found to make this better for people who are affected?
If you looked
Sorry,
at
Senator, you had your opportunity to make your contribution. Minister would ask you to conclude.
I will conclude with this point. I responded back to a communication that I received from the trustee who said they believed this was the best outcome that could be achieved with the circumstances that are available.
you brought forward just a few months
This
ago to give the
application,
unilateral power
as everybody knows, this application will now go forward to the pension board that will make their decision in relation to it.